back, everyone. Those of you that don't know me, my name is Justin. I'm the owner of Mountain Age Cattle. Happy New Year, right? Finally, we're out of 2020. Today is the 1st. We are officially in 2021. So that's exciting, really exciting for me. I'm sure a lot of you guys are the same way, just done with 2020, right? So I have got so much that's going on right now. A lot of things I'll fill everybody in on. Today's video actually is going to be about the ranch timeline. I mentioned before in one of the videos that I would probably break down at some point the ranch timeline. So I think this is probably the most opportune time to discuss the timeline. And the reason for that is because today's the 1st, starting the new year. The next big thing that's coming up, for me anyways, and some of the ranches that I work for, calving season is right around the corner. So we're probably going to start the timeline there. And I'll talk about from the ranch timeline, calving, all the way around until we get back to calving again. And there's a lot of information. So I'm going to try to make it interesting and try to make it fun and throw a few clips in there. So hopefully you guys stay with me and we'll have fun doing about some of the terminology that I'll be using real fast. I'll elaborate definitely more. If there's something that you don't understand or maybe something that I didn't clarify on, please feel free to comment below and I will answer your question. So we have bulls, steers, heifers, first-year heifers, second-year heifers, cows, and then we have replacement cows, replacement heifers, replacement bulls, and there's going to be some other terminology that we'll get to here in a minute. So more or less, bulls are production. They're still intact. They can reproduce. Steers means they're cut, no reproduction. Heifers mean that they have not given a calf yet. And first-year heifer would mean that she's going to drop her first calf. Second-year heifer means she's going to drop her second calf. By the time she's dropped her third calf, we classify her as a cow. She's experienced. So when we do bull turnout, which we don't do AI, that's a whole nother topic we'll get into. I do bull turnout, and I put bulls with the cows. That bull is my choice of what I want my cows to drop, how heavy I want my calves to be. I wouldn't put that same bull with my heifers. And the reason for that is I don't want, a 90-pound calf dropping out of a first-year heifer that has no experience. So we have heifer bulls. And more or less what that means is this bull is specifically set aside for my heifers. It's a low birth weight calf that he's going to produce, and it's less stressful on the heifer. So now that we got through some of the terminology, like I said, if there's something else that I say or that I don't elaborate on, comment below. I will definitely answer. So calving season's right around the corner. It's about 60 days away. And that's the next big thing on the ranch timeline. So let's just put ourselves in March. And they start dropping calves. Now, when they drop a bull calf, I tag them in the right ear. When it's a heifer calf, I tag them in the left ear. There's a reason behind that. And every rancher has his own way of tagging and identifying their livestock. Now for me, the reason that I do that is I know when vaccine time comes around and the heifer calves are ready for their brucellosis tag, their bangs tag, it's going to go in their right ear. So I tag them in the left ear just for ranch identification. And the steers are the same thing. I put them in the right ear because ultimately when I give them an EID tag, it's going to go in their left ear. So there's a reason for a lot of small things like that. But so let's just say that we're in March and we started dropping calves. Now when that calf is dropped, I need to obviously be there. I need to watch it. I need to see it. Sometimes you miss them. You don't get all of them. But I need to try to see as many as I can. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking to see how that mom did. Was she struggling? Okay, so 60 days later, let's say we're in March. Calves started dropping. We talked about what ear we're going to tag them in. And for a small part, we talked about why we're going to tag them in those ears. So in order to actually tag them, you got to get in there and be between the mom and that calf to tag them. Now I try to tag them with the same number, and that's for future reference for me when they need help. The calf gets outside the fence. or a calf is sick, I at least can identify a little bit easier of who that calf belongs to. Now, you have to get in there and you got to tag them. Now it's exciting. Mom's gonna come at you a little bit. She's gonna bluff you. Sometimes they don't bluff, and it's dangerous. But ultimately, it is for the betterment of your herd, and it's for the betterment of production. So some of the cows know that. Depends on how involved with your herd that you are. Some of them trust you, and some of them know, and some of them don't. But this is the time of year that it is zero sleep. I mean, you're talking sleep deprivation to the 10th power, especially when it's one guy. Now, if you have more people, you can take shifts, and it's a little bit less stressful. But ultimately, we try to watch every calf be born that you can. And the reason for that is if they're struggling, especially these heifer calves, or the heifer cows, I'm sorry, that are given their first calf. We try to watch them, because if they're hurting or they're struggling, or they show any kind of signs of hesitation of dropping that calf, we want to be there to help. And that means pulling the calf. Now, sometimes it can be a breech calf, sometimes it can be twins. There's just a lot of things that can go on, and there's a lot of reasons that we need to be there to watch it. On top of not just trying to watch those heifer cows drop, I look at my older cows, some of the ones that their body condition has dropped a little bit over the years and they're diminishing. It's not as easy on them either to drop calves now, so there's a lot going on. Now, every calf is tagged, and the timing that I probably didn't elaborate on when you go to tag these calves is I normally wait. I wait until that newborn calf has stood up and that baby and mom has had their moment, and it's still pretty special. It's pretty awesome to see, but I wait until mom cleans up that calf. I wait until that baby has got a little bit of colostrum, and I make sure that it can stand on its own. And like I said, there's a reason that we're there, because there might be the situation where the calf's not doing good, the calf's not breathing, the mom is struggling dropping that calf, and that's why we're there to watch it. But there's a timing in that small window when it's perfect to actually get in there to tag it. So calving season. So calving season is going to last as long as we did the bull turnout. So this year we did bull turnout for 60 days, which means we potentially are going to have calves dropped for 60 days. Now, give or take a few days, some of those calves might have finished, some of the cows might not have taken, so they might not go the full 60 days. As we're keeping an eye on every calf that's dropped and keeping a count, we'll kind of have an idea, how far we are, 60%, 80%, how many calves we have left. But for 60 days, potentially we're going to have calves dropped. Now, calves started dropping in March. Now, 30 days later, which in the April time frame, which is halfway through calving, I'm going to bring the bulls in. Now, I have to bring the bulls in to actually take them to the vet. And when I take them to the vet, I'm trying to get their annual soundness test. They're going to test them for more or less their sperm. We're going to test motility, abnormalities, normal, and ultimately what we're trying to do is we don't want to go above 30% on their abnormalities. If they go above 30% on their abnormalities, it kind of puts them in a category of where I'm going to have to find a replacement bull now. He's no longer producing, or he's not producing as much, he's not being effective, and that's where that replacement bull terminology comes in. So when the tests come back, it gives me an idea of how many more bulls I'm going to have to replace and swap out. On top of taking them in for their annual soundness test, I'm also getting them a trick test done. Now, in another video, I'll talk about vaccines, some sicknesses, some bacteria, some venereal diseases. We'll talk about doctoring. We'll go through my vet bag. In fact, we'll make an actual video of going through all of that. So we now know whether or not, when the tests come back, if we're going to keep this bull or if we've got to replace it. So that's halfway through calving. So ultimately, we've talked about calving, when calving season started, and we started at the beginning of March. Ultimately, it's going to last 60 days. Now, it might go the full 60 days. The bulls might have finished. Some cows might not have taken, and we might actually finish before 60 days. Normally, that would be awesome, but we're going to probably go the full 60 days, if not a few days over. But halfway through calving season, we brought the bulls in. We brought them in for their examination, and we brought them in for their annual vaccine. We brought them in to get tested and check the motility. Now, that's halfway through calving, and the bulls are done. Now we know if we need to replace them or we don't need to replace them. But at the end of calving, which means the overall 60 days of calving, we should almost be done with every single calf. If not every calf, we should be pretty close. But that is when we now need to focus on the girls, the moms. So we're going to bring the herd in, the moms and the babies. We're going to bring them in, and this is where the girls get their annual vaccine for pre-breeding. Now, it gets a little bit complicated because we still had our heifer cows. Remember, they're first and second time moms? So they're going to go to this side, and then the cows are going to go to this side. Now they're going to get, the cows are going to get their annual pre-breeding vaccination, and it's just once a year. The heifers, we double down on that vaccine. They're going to get 2 sets. So that means we're at the end of calving season. Everything got brought in so they can get their vaccine. The heifers, the first and second year heifers, they're going to get that same vaccine that the other cows got. However, 30 days from this point, I'm going to bring the heifer calves or the heifer cows back in, and they're going to get another set of that. After they get past, being a second year heifer and they're a cow, they'll just get it once a year. We just like to double down on that vaccine, and like I said previously, we will actually get into in depth with vaccines and medicines and the purposes of them. So now we went through calving, went through pre-breeding checks and vaccines for the bulls, and pre-breeding vaccines and checks for the cows. Okay, so next on the timeline is going to be branding. Now, there's a lot that goes on with branding. Some people are nostalgia and they like to drag calves. Other people like to use chutes. They run their calves through and they doctor and cut bull calves in a chute. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. For us, we stay nostalgic and we drag calves. Now, it's a fun time for us because we do it on Memorial Day weekend. And a lot of the ranches, they all act like a good community, and we go from one ranch to the next ranch, and we all kind of help each other knock each other's herds out and get the job done. That's a lot of fun because it's a lot of food for a couple of days, and more or less for a week straight. It's go, 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 but it's fun. It's good laughs, possibly a lot of beer, so I've heard, but it's good time. Now, to reiterate, we started with our timeline with calving. Now, we started in March, went halfway through March to April. We did our bull check, and now we're good to go with the pre-breeding on the bulls. At the end of April, we did our cows, then we did our cow check, and they got a pre-breeding. Now, Memorial Day weekend is at the end of May. So that means from April and most of the month of May, we have a 30-day span in there where the calves are doing nothing but just eating, nursing, mom's taking care of them, and they're growing. So when we get towards the end of May and we get into Memorial Day weekend, that's when we bring the herd in. Everything but the bulls. So we bring the mom and the calves in. Now this is where we separate them. Now we separate the calves here and the moms here. Sometimes it can be a little bit stressful, but the more people that you have, you can do it calmly and a little bit more efficiently. So we put the calves aside. Now the bull calves, this is where they get cut, which means they'll now be steers. And the bull calves, which would be now steer calves, and the heifer calves, all the calves get a brand. So in that time frame, they're going to get one shot, and this is going to be their annual 7-way shot. And like I said before, we'll get into vaccines and shots and etc. In another video, but this is where they get their shot. So after branding, we put the herds back together. Now we're at the end of May. We already took care of pre-breeding vaccinations for the boys and the girls. So now everything's branded, everything's marked, we know what is what, and we're getting ready to actually do the bull turnout again. So getting close to the bull turnout, you're probably thinking, don't they already have a calf? They do. So we're gonna do the bull turnout when the moms have a baby with them now. Okay, so now we got through branding. Now, that was at the end of May on Memorial Day weekend, so for the next 2 weeks, we've got a little bit of time. And that time is checking fence, getting the bulls ready, segregating the bulls, making sure that everything's last minute good to go, because ultimately we're going to have 2 different breeding pastures. We're going to put the main herd here with the bulls that go with them, and then we're going to have our heifer pasture that our heifers and the heifer bulls go into. And we kind of elaborated a little bit as to the purpose and why we have heifer bulls. So 2 weeks later, we're midway through June now, and we're going to do bull turnout from June for 60 days. Now, ultimately, as you can remember, we started with calving season, and that's where it comes into play. We're going to leave the bulls with those cows for 60 days. Now, without getting too in depth with the gestation period again, gestation period is 283, 284 days. We give a leadway each way 3 to 4 days. And it kind of sets a precedent for the next year of when we should start dropping calves. Now, anything can happen. We get flat tires, or we get a storm, something happens, and it prolongs us 1 or 2 days from starting bull turnout. And that's why the days can be off just a few when you get around to the next year and you start calving. But midway through June is when we do bull turnout. Okay, so now we are at bull turnout, the second week of June. Now the bull's going to stay there for 60 days, as we talked about, which puts us at the midway point in August. So that's 60 days. So as we talk about the timeline, and we know in August, the second week, we're going to pull the bulls back out. So here we are in June. We have June, July, August, pull the bulls, September. September comes around, and normally the very first week, or the first weekend, I pull the herd back in. Not the bulls. Bulls, they're pulled for the year. They've done their job. They get treats. They're awesome. But we're going to pull the cows and the calves in. Normally that, like I said, the first. So here we are in September 1st. Now I pull those in and segregate the herd one more time. Now the moms go over here and the calves come over here. Keep in mind, now the cows are bred, but we pull the calves aside because they're going to get what's called a pre-weaning shot. Now at branding, they got their first 7-way shot. Now that we pulled them in here to September, they're going to get their second 7-way shot, but their first 5-way viral shot. And that's for the pre-weaning. So, one last time, we are at September 1st. They are getting their second 7-way shot and their first 5-way shot. Now, every time that we've brought the herd in, we brought the calves in, it's more time for us to critique our information and our records. So we put them across the scales, and we get a weight on every single animal. We're checking for cuts and scrapes and making sure tags look good and no infections and nobody's got fever. And so they get their first 5-way shot here, and it's September 1st. We put them back with the moms, and we let them stay for 30 days. Now, 30 days later is going to be October 1st. October 1st, we bring them all back in one last time. October 1st starts the big boy and big girl adventure for these calves. We separate them permanently now. So now we have the calves separated from the moms on October 1st, and we give them their second 5-way shot. Now, when we do that, we know in our mind that we're separating the moms and the babies, and we're going to keep them separated for at least 30 days. We're going to wean these calves for at least 30 days before we ship. Now, the calves got their second 5-way shot. When I give them their second 5-way shot, I also separated the herd and I put the heifer calves over here. They all got the 5-way shot their second time, but the heifers are going to get what's called a Bangs vaccination, and that's for brucellosis. Now that's a reproductive vaccine. As I previously mentioned, we'll get into all the vaccines, the purpose of the vaccines, in a whole nother video, which probably be next. Keep a lookout for that one. But the heifers get one additional shot that the steer calves did not get. So they all get their shots, put them back together, and we put them in a short pen. Now we're watching them in the short pen to make sure, because this is the first time that they don't have their mom's milk readily available. They've had a lot of months to where they're developing their ruins in their stomach to make sure that they can handle crude feed. But this is going to be the first time that they don't just have mom at their beck and call and say, I want some milk because I'm hungry. So we keep an eye on them. Now we want to make sure that they don't get fevers, they're not catching pneumonia, that they're actually gaining weight and not maintaining weight or dropping weight. That's why we want them in the short pen, is to keep a really close eye on them for 30 days. Now at the end of 30 days, which will put us at November 1st, will be our shipping date. Now, give or take on the shipping date of November 1st, it could be anywhere within that week time frame. Now, if you watch some of my older videos, you noticed that I have mentioned our cake and some of the other things that we do, our blocks. It's all about management and getting to this point. Did we buy enough feed? Did we buy enough cake? Do we have enough block? Did we manage it just right to get to this point, getting ready to actually ship calves? On the timeline, we are on November 1st, which means shipping season. So shipping time is here. Now, give or take a few days in there. You know, if I don't think that we're at weight, or if the market's not quite right, it depends on where we're at. But I want to reiterate about not every rancher sticks to the same timeline that I've given you guys today, because we can ship at whatever weight we want. And everybody's got their own game plan of when they can take them to market, when they think they're going to be, you know, most profitable at this weight, and they're watching the market. Everybody's watching the market, but for us, we don't have the abundance amount of crude feed and pasture. It's somewhat, you could call it dry where we're at, but the grass doesn't grow fast. So we have to account when we go to market, and then control the budget from the revenue to be able to buy crude feed throughout the year when we need it, because it is so dry. So our calves were born in March. So we have March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Now, they're just hitting the 9-month year age when we ship. So that's 9 months of growing, and we're at a certain weight. So let's just say that we're at 550, 600 pounds. Now, not every rancher does that. Some ranchers sell at 300 pounds. That means they have a completely different timeline and a completely different setup. So I gave you the timeline today of how we do things and how I do things, and no way is wrong and no way is right. Now we've talked about the majority of the timeline, and we're at round about November 1st. When we originally pulled those calves off in October, for the first time away from their moms permanently, we're also keeping an eye on those moms. Now, not necessarily because of the separation, but we're keeping an eye on them because the entire time that those calves were with them, most the entire time that the calves were nursing on that mom, she was also bred. So we want to make sure that that calf did not suck down on that mom too much, because winter is here. It's approaching. Here we are, you know, in November, and deep winter is going to be here pretty soon. You have to make sure that that mom wasn't drawn down too much going into winter. So when we pulled them in October, October is when we really try to put those extra nutrients and the vitamins back into those cows to bring them back up so they can give a good, strong fetus. Now, not every rancher sticks to these plans. Everybody ships at different weights. But for us in the region that we're in, we stick to that 9-month routine of feeding these calves because it's going to take that long to get them to the weight that we need for our budget. So when you think about November, we have just a few months. We just have December, January, and February, another 90 days, and then they're going to start dropping calves, and we start this all over again. Okay, so now we've gotten to November, and we've got to shipping, and we've shipped the calves. Next thing on the timeline, which is going to be the last thing on the timeline, is another 30 days later in December. And in December, we do Preg Checks. Now, Preg Check is probably the most stressful time for me anyways, because for one, you're like, gee, man, did we leave the bulls out long enough? Did I make the wrong decision and keep this bull when I shouldn't have kept this bull? But ultimately, we find out who was bred and who's not. So we do Preg Checks. Now, if the cow is open, she goes over here. If she's bred, she gets turned out to pasture. Now, imagine if you started with 10 cows and 7 were bred, 3 were open. Now, let's do small numbers. Let's do like $100, all right? Easy math. So if we had 10 cows, let's say they were all bred. That means 10 calves, right? Say we got $100 a calf. That's $1,000. Now, 7 calves versus 10 calves, that's $300 difference, except we're into the thousands numbers in real life. So if the cow is open and not bred, I need to take her to market, all the open cows, take them to market and buy bred cows that are timed to drop a calf the same time my herd is. Because if I don't replace that cow to drop a calf at the same time, my ultimate annual revenue is going to be less every single open cow. Now, on top of that, when we backtrack to November, it's shipping, because every year a cow gets older. When I mentioned earlier about the cows get older, 10 to 12 years old, that is when I start looking at replacement cows. When we looked at the time frame earlier and we were in November, we were looking at shipping. But in my mind, I'm looking at particular heifer calves that I liked. I like their posture, I like the way they gained weight. Ultimately, I'm just going to keep a few of those, but not just a random number. The random number would be bad ranching. But if you know precisely everything about your herd, you know when your cows are 10 years old, and I know that their production is dropping off. So when a cow hits 10 years old, I'm going to hold one of my heifer calves back to replace her, because this calf over here is just a newborn. We'll say 9 months, not a newborn, but when we go to ship, she's about 9 months. So I'm not going to be able to breed her until the next year rolls around. She won't produce a calf until that next spring following. So it's almost 2 years out. So every time a cow hits 10 years old, I keep a replacement heifer that year to replace her, because in 2 years, when she actually produces a calf, this cow will be 12, and we can actually cull her from the herd, and now she's a replacement. And then we'll be able to keep that one for 10 years, so be it if she actually breeds every year. But that's where the terminology of replacement heifer comes in. A lot of people sell their entire calf market, and then they just buy replacement heifers, and that's fine too. Everybody has their own rhyme and reason, but that ultimately gets us to the end of the timeline into December, when we do the Preg checks and we know who's open and who's bred. Right after December, as we've been talking about all this time, is January, February, and March. We start it all over again. So that's more or less just a quick fast track of a timeline, our particular timeline, and hopefully you learned something from it. Hopefully it wasn't too monotonous, but I'm excited, I'm happy. I know that the next video that's going to come up that we're going to do is definitely about my vet bag, the doctoring, the vaccines, and everything that we go through to take care of these cows and these calves and the bulls all year round. What to look for, whether it's going to be pneumonia, fever, foot rot. There's a lot of things that we're going to look at and discuss in the next video. So thank you guys. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe now. If you had any comments, I'd be glad to answer all your questions. Feel free to comment below, and Happy New Year, everyone.